All right.
I'm all right. Well, I'm not all right because we recorded yesterday and it was like I was in a tank top and it was really sunny. And now today it's rainy. I had
Oh,
iced tea yesterday and now I've got hot coffee
hot.
and a jumper. Standard British weather, this.
Yep. Yep. Summer is
Standard.
over. It was lovely yesterday when we
Yeah.
had summer.
Yeah.
Now
We had a
it's
week of
gone.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cut the grass yesterday. It was lovely. We had a barbecue.
Oh,
Beautiful.
really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Woke up this morning, opened the Velux window last night, and I was like, oh, it's so lully and warm. And then about 5 o'clock this morning, I was like, oh, I'm getting rained on.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah. So that was nice. Random blabs, go.
So my random lamb
Yes.
is directly related to the episode.
Mm.
And it is about the amount of force it takes to break the femur bone.
Ugh.
And the femur bone is the thigh bone, the longest, strongest, heaviest bone in the body. And it takes 4,000 newtons of force to break. And that is equivalent to 900 pounds force,
That's a
which
lot.
is the most common reasons for breaking the femur is high-speed traumatic car accidents.
Ugh.
Just leaving that there for you, for everybody.
That's hideous.
Yeah.
That must be incredibly painful.
It's one of the worst breaks you can do.
Oh,
Fun fact as well, I've never broken a bone.
me either. Well,
Yeah.
actually, I've broken my collarbone.
All right, so that was an outright lie then.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Well, I didn't break it. I was kicked
Oh, bye.
by a boy,
Oh,
which is why I don't like boys.
I don't think that's the
It's
reason you don't like boys.
not. It's because I
No.
like girls. Um, yeah. Yeah, no, I suppose that's an outright lie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've never
well,
broken my bone
I'm glad for you.
apart from my pelvis and my spine and
Yeah, my arm, my leg twice.
No, yeah, I've never broken a bone. Right,
Well,
what's your plan?
it's a coincidence because I actually had a random fact and it's about bones.
No, you shut your face. You
I
didn't even
will
know what the
not,
episode was going to be.
I will not shut my face.
Shut up in your face.
Shut up in your face. Babies are born with around 300 bones, but some
And
of
then they
these
fuse.
will eventually fuse together, which is why an adult body has 206. It's a lot of fusing that babies
Do
have to
you
do,
know
isn't it?
which bones fuse? Because I
Yeah,
do.
all of them.
The tailbone that fuses together. That's loads of separate little bones. The
That is
skull,
correct.
the
Yeah,
kneecap.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, you're correct on all of that. Yes.
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
Studied anatomy and physiology.
Bush did. Yeah. Random
Random blams
blams.
done.
Done.
Morning. That was incredibly soulful, Kate.
Well, thank
What?
you.
You like the songbird?
I,
Songbird of the morning.
I have been
Wow.
called that once.
I've been called the songbird of my generation.
Yes. People often refer to me as soulful songbird Kate.
Wow.
Mm.
I'm going to take that clip of our recording and I'm going to use it as my alarm clock.
I'll,
Morning.
I'll create you a ringtone.
Morning's here. Morning is here.
Yeah,
Sunshine is here.
yeah. And then if on your second alarm, you can have morning, morning.
And then on the
Yeah,
third
good.
one, get
Get
up.
up, get the fuck out of bed. Yeah. Well, there you go.
No, I
Morning.
actually don't set an alarm because I'm up at the crack of dawn no matter
Yeah.
what.
I was this morning after being rained on. I was up at it was 25 past 5.
Where was you to get rained on?
In bed.
Why did you get rained on?
Because I had the Velux window open.
Ah,
Because when I went
gaping
to
hole in
bed,
the roof.
yeah, when I went to bed last night, it was summer.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's lolly. Open all the windows, which we did. And then, yeah, woke up to winter
Yeah.
this morning. So, yeah, I've been up
Do
since
you remember? Do
5:30.
you ever watch Thumbelina? Thumbelina's one of my favourites.
As in the original film,
Yeah,
Thumbelina.
Thumbelina. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they the frost comes and it literally like overnight
Yeah.
they literally coat everything in frost. That is exactly what happens.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to live in America because I like it better than I like England.
I wish that we got American snow. I wish that we had that.
You know,
With all of my heart, I wish that we had American snow.
my sister in America will be laughing her tits off right now because I went out there one year and I was like, I used to go out there every year and see my sister. And I said one year, I was like, I'm coming out at the beginning of the year, like January, February time, because I want to play in all the snow because they have a massive amount of snow.
Yeah, snow days.
Yeah. And I was
We don't
like,
get snow days.
I'm packing all my snow gear, everything, packed it all. And she was like, she used to send me all these pictures and videos of them like snow plows and everything. And I was like, I can't wait. So I packed all my stuff and got out there, and I was standing in the supermarket in said snow gear because I didn't actually pack anything else. So I just had loads of really warm clothes, snow boots, everything, standing there in all my snow gear. And she was like, oh, unseasonably warm, isn't it? And I was like, it
It's
is,
never like
isn't
this.
it? And she was like, I can't believe it. Normally we're feet and feet deep in snow. I can't believe it, you know. And I was like, yes, I can't believe it either.
Great.
It didn't snow at all the whole time I was out there. I was boiling in all my snow gear.
Did you just pack snowshoes and that was it? Just traipsing about?
Moon boots. Moon boots. I spent the whole time in frigging moon boots and there was not a bit of snow. I was fuming.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry for you.
Thanks.
Right. Today's episode.
Yeah, what's happening?
Following on from the Squirm trilogy.
Yeah.
This is a small bit squirmy.
Oh.
Small bit. So trigger warning for anybody that doesn't like the idea of bones breaking. This is called the Bone Breaker. There is no way out of it. that is what the episode's called.
All right, I'll be squirmy.
Squirm. So,
all right, let's do it then.
On the 4th of July, 1994, in the small town of Baraboo, Wisconsin, 14-year-old Chris Steiner disappeared from his home. He'd gone to bed the previous night and his mum had actually checked on him at around 10 p.m. He'd been sound asleep on his bed. But the next morning, the 4th of July, his mother woke early to make sure that Chris was up because he'd started a new job and she didn't want him to be late. And so she got up especially early to go and wake him up. And he'd been so excited about this new job, about the possibilities of earning his own money. You know, when you're a kid and you think, oh, I'm going to get all this money coming in, you spend it before it's even got there.
I do it now.
That's even as an adult. So that's exactly what he'd done. He'd worked out how much he was going to get from working weekends and holidays, and things like that. So he was dead excited. And so when she went to wake him up and realised that his bed was empty, she immediately phoned the police. And when they eventually turned up, they found a very suspicious scene. The back patio doors that would have been locked that night were unlocked. There were muddy footprints throughout the house. And the screen to the downstairs bedroom had been slashed open. And this was Chris's older brother's bedroom, and he had not been home that night. And being that it was the 4th of July weekend, that's not something that we generally celebrate in the UK, but I know that in America, the 4th of July is quite a big deal.
Mm.
So police advised Chris's parents that he'd probably just snuck out to go to like a party or something like that. And that he'd lost track of time, he'd got a bit drunk, and he was a bit embarrassed about coming home, didn't want to get in trouble. But his parents insisted that that wasn't him. He wasn't like that, and he wouldn't have run away. He was excited about this new job, and there was no reason that he would have absconded from the house, or snuck out or run away or anything. So they were certain that he hadn't just up and left of his own accord.
Yeah, because you know your own kid, don't you? And you know if it's something that they're likely to do. And the police always
absolutely.
go, oh, no, he's probably just out with some girl or gone
I
to a
think
party or something. And you're
I
like,
would be fuming if my child disappeared and the police went, oh, he's probably run away, when 100%
yeah,
that they would never do that. I'd be
yeah.
fuming.
I mean, can you imagine Lewis?
Yeah, if he
Like
disappeared.
if he disappeared, God forbid. But if he disappeared and the police were like, oh, he's probably just gone out to some party and got himself a bit drunk,
Nah,
you'd be like,
not little Lou.
anyone who ever met him would know that he is not that boy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy.
He is a good boy.
So as the hours passed and there was no sign of Chris returning home from his supposed drunken night out, the police did put out a search for him. And the search ended on the 10th of July, 6 days later, when Chris's body was found draped over a partially submerged tree log along the edge of a sandbar in the Wisconsin River. After being in the water for a few days in the middle of summer, his body had already started to decompose. It wasn't in a great shape. But an autopsy revealed that Chris had water in his lungs. So his death was ruled drowning. However, the autopsy didn't reveal his manner of death, so it was listed as undetermined. So I was a bit confused by that when I was sort of looking it up and things. And so the cause of death is obviously what caused him to die, or what caused somebody to die, like gunshot, drowning, things like that.
Yeah.
The manner of death, there's 4 categories. So natural, accident, homicide, and suicide. And that is the manner of death. So the coroner couldn't decide which one that fell into. They just knew that he drowned, didn't know whether it was accidental, whether it was suicide or
under the water. Yeah.
He couldn't determine. But his parents just couldn't understand how their son had gone from being in bed asleep at 10 p.m. one evening to drowning in the river. So they were certain that foul play was at hand, and they just couldn't prove it. Just over a year later, on July 29th, 13-year-old Thad Phillips, he's known as Thad, so that's what I'll be referring to him. His name is Thaddeus, but everyone called him Thad, had fallen asleep downstairs on the sofa after a lovely family day out. His parents had gone up to bed that night, and Thad had begged them to let him stay up with his little sister to watch the TV, and then he had eventually fallen asleep downstairs on the sofa. At some point in that night, Thad was kind of roused out of his sleep as he was scooped up off the sofa. He assumed that his dad had come down to get him and put him to bed like he had done so many times previously. So he allowed himself to be carried and to continue in that kind of sleepy awake state until he sensed that something wasn't quite right. He wasn't feeling the normal bumping against his dad's chest as he climbed the stairs, that rhythmic kind of back and forward. And instead, he felt the cool night air on his face, and then the hard pavement on his bare feet as he was set down. Still groggy from being woken up, he rubbed his eyes and realised that the person he'd carried him out of his house wasn't his dad. It was a teenage boy, but not one that he recognised. Thad and his family had moved to the town of Baraboo 2 weeks ago. He'd literally been in their house 2 weeks, so he didn't really know anyone. The teenage boy spoke calmly to Thad and asked if he could walk down the road with him to help him with his car. So Thad thought that perhaps this was a friend of his dad's, and that the boy had gone upstairs in his house and asked his dad for help, but because his dad was sleeping, his dad had said no. So instead, he'd come down the stairs and woke Thad up, believing that Thad would help. So he sleepily agreed. It wasn't a long walk, just up and over the hill in the distance. While they walked, the two boys chatted. They spoke about baseball cards, cars, sports, all things that the teenage Thad was interested in. He wasn't scared. He wasn't unsure. He didn't know that he needed to be. So the boys arrived at a run-down looking house about a half a mile away from Thad's home. The boy said to Thad that he lived there with his brother and motioned for him to go inside. Inside the house, it was an absolute state. The house was in total disarray. There was clothes everywhere, boxes of stuff just littered about, like gone off food, left on plate. Like, it was an absolute state.
Blech.
And it was then that Thad started to suspect that this boy was not a friend of his dad's. The boy introduced himself as Joe, but that was all. And he was actually 17-year-old Joe Clarke. And he told Thad that he was actually throwing a party and that he'd invited some boys from the neighborhood and he wanted Thad to come. And he started reeling off names of other teenage boys in the area, and some of which Thad knew from being at the high school for, or middle school, whatever that would be. So Joe said to Thad that they were all going to hang out and they were going to have a great time. So while they waited for these other boys to arrive, Joe asked Thad to go upstairs with him so that he could show him his collection of model cars. They'd been speaking about it on their walk there, so Thad was like, yeah, I'll come and see them. But still unsure about what was going on. You know, it was the middle of the night. He'd been asleep half an hour ago, and now he was in this strange boy's house being invited to this party, and being invited upstairs to go and see these model cars. He was, you know, a little bit unsure, but nevertheless, he made his way up the stairs. As soon as both boys were upstairs in Joe's bedroom, Joe pushed Thad roughly onto this filthy stained mattress on his bed and viciously grabbed his right ankle. And he began to slowly twist it to the right. And Thad was too stunned and shocked at the sudden attack to do anything, you know. It literally, in a split second, he'd been pushed down on this bed and his ankle was being twisted. And Joe continued to twist Thad's ankle, and he twisted and twisted past the point of natural movement, and then continued to twist more until it went crack and Thad's ankle bone snapped and splintered.
Jesus Christ.
Immediately after, Joe sat down on the bed with Thad and kind of sat with his head in his hands a little bit. And without even a second thought, Thad saw an opportunity and he shot up off the bed with his broken ankle and he ran out of the bedroom, powered by adrenaline and feeling no pain, nothing other than his ankle bones slipping and sliding against the other bones. He made it down the stairs and into the living room and halfway to the kitchen before Joe caught up with him.
Fuck off, Joe.
From behind, Joe grabbed Thad by the neck and dragged him into the living room and threw him down roughly onto the sofa. And he began to beat Thad, punching and kicking him everywhere that he could. And then he grabbed Thad's right leg and he began to lift it straight up.
Oh, God.
Putting all of his weight into pushing Thad's leg straight up and over his head, till with an almighty crack, Thad's femur bone broke. So if you remember from the Blam, the femur bone is the longest, strongest, and hardest bone in the human body. It can withstand the weight of 30 times your body weight. And it's a pretty sturdy bone and generally only breaks due to traumatic accidents like a car crash, a fall from a great height, or even a gunshot where it directly hits the bone.
Oh.
So you can just imagine the force Joe had to apply with his whole body as he pushed Thad's leg past breaking point. So this assault on Thad lasted a few hours, with Joe continuously beating Thad, kicking, hitting, punching, twisting his already broken ankle until it was only being held on by skin and was facing completely the wrong direction. After the assault, Joe would switch back to being a normal teenage boy. And it was during these moments that Thad tried to kind of humanize himself and talk to Joe.
Oh.
And he pleaded with Joe to let him go. He said that he would tell people that he'd been in an accident and that's how he'd sustained the injuries. He kept saying that, he would tell people I walked into a coffee table. And Joe kind of would agree, all right, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that. And then he would switch again and go, no, I don't think that would work. That's not going to work. And Thad asked Joe why he was doing this to him. And Joe simply said that he was fascinated by the sound of bones breaking.
God, Joe.
So Thad said, why don't you just break your own bones then? And Joe said that he'd actually tried to do that, but he couldn't get the right angle or enough pressure to kind of do it himself. And Thad asked Joe if he'd ever done this to anyone else, and he said yes. While they spoke, Joe would be tending to Thad's injuries, putting his shattered legs into braces, and he had hundreds of pairs of fresh white tennis socks that he would put on Thad's injured feet and his ankles. He would make sure that all the ribbing was straight and that all the seams were in alignment with his toes. And he kind of did that because he felt that he was kind of mending these breaks so that he could break them all over again.
Ugh.
And he would try and make Thad walk on his shattered legs. So he would put them in braces and then get him to walk, which he couldn't. And so Joe would actually carry him kind of around to different places, caring for him and acting like a friend, and then setting him down on the sofa so that they could watch films together. As night turned to morning, Joe carried Thad back upstairs to his bedroom, and all the while Thad was fighting Joe and he was hitting him in the back of the head and trying to get away. But this only made Joe angry. And when they were upstairs, Joe placed Thad back on this soiled, disgusting mattress and sat atop him. So you can imagine Thad laid out on the bed and Joe was sat atop him with his back kind of to Thad's face. And he grabbed his left ankle. Oh. And he twisted and twisted and twisted until it snapped and splintered just like the right one had. But he didn't stop there. And he continued to twist Thad's foot until it was completely backwards. And then he turned and placed a pillow over Thad's face to try and suffocate him. And he yelled at Thad and told him to stop fighting back, because while Joe was sat atop him, twisting his foot round, Thad was, punching him in the back and doing everything that he could to get him to stop. Yeah. So Joe said, if you keep fighting back, I'm going to break your back and I'm going to break your neck.
Oh, God. So
Thad had no reason to believe that he wasn't capable of that.
Yeah.
He'd already broken both of his ankles and his femur.
Oh.
So Thad actually took to placing the pillow over his own face anytime that attacks would come. He didn't want to scream out and he didn't want Joe to see him cry. So for a 13-year-old boy, he was rock hard.
Yeah. Thad. I'm surprised he's even able to talk at all.
I think most of this is adrenaline that kind of keeps him going for a little bit. But
geez.
So throughout that day, Joe continued to switch between this friendly, caring person to beating Thad and injuring his already broken bones, you know, or even though he'd broken his ankle, that wasn't enough. He would just carry on.
Ugh.
And Thad said that he took his anger and frustration out on him. So Joe sometimes would leave Thad, he would go downstairs, he'd go out to his car, he'd try and fix something with his car, and when that didn't work, he came flying up the stairs and would take his frustration out on Thad and start beating him again. And then as soon as that assault was finished, he would pop these white socks back on and then go to this nice, caring teenage boy again. And Thad said that when the socks were on, he knew that he was safe for a little while. But during that whole day, Thad suffered not just physical abuse, but mental abuse as well. The constant switch between good and evil was, you know, messing with his head. And while Joe was in this good mood, he would, Thad would ask him, you know, like I said, trying to humanize himself. And he would ask him if he could please phone his parents because they would be worried about him. And Joe agreed. So he went downstairs to get Thad a telephone. And he handed over this telephone and he watched as Thad dialed his home number and then waited for it to ring. But it never rang because the phone was disconnected. So it was like this mental manipulation as well. And so Joe would put Thad's legs in braces and make him try and walk down the stairs. And Thad would be stopped he would be stood upright with these leg braces on, with his body weight on his broken ankles, on his broken femur, and he was stood one time at the top of the stairs and Joe was trying to force him down the stairs, to walk down the stairs. And when he couldn't, Joe kicked his legs and Thad tumbled from like head first to the bottom step. Like you can imagine, like bouncing on all of his broken bones.
I don't want to imagine.
As the day turned into evening and the sun started to go down, Thad had now been in Joe's house for almost an entire day. And he heard Joe go out. He heard Joe shut the door, start his car, and then drive away. So without even a moment's delay, Thad peeled his broken body off the mattress. He dragged it to the top of the stairs and he couldn't move his legs at all. There was no chance of him walking down the stairs. So all he could do was to summon up as much courage as he could and then throw himself headfirst down the stairs. His broken bones, like bruised legs, bashing on every step as he went down to the bottom and he passed out. How long he was passed out for is anyone's guess. He had no idea. But when he came to, he dragged his body down the hallway, through the living room, and then just making it a few feet at a time before he would pass out for a few seconds. And then he would come back to again and he would continue to drag his body. Thad's aim was to make it into the kitchen, because in the kitchen was a phone that he had heard Joe use before. But before he could get to the phone, he heard the front door unlock. Joe had returned. And he wasn't alone. Joe had brought his girlfriend home. Thad laid just as still as he could, sprawled out on the kitchen floor. And he didn't want to draw any attention to himself because for all he knew, this girl was just as crazy as Joe and would do more harm to him. So he didn't want to bring any attention to himself. So he just laid there, listening as they spoke for a while. Then he heard Joe give her a kiss, say goodbye, and then she left. Moments later, Joe walked into the kitchen and to his utter surprise found Thad. He could not believe that this skinny little kid with all of his broken bones had managed to make it all the way from upstairs down into the kitchen, and he was furious. So he picked Thad up roughly, took him back upstairs, where he unleashed all of this anger on him, twisting his already broken ankles, hitting and punching, running and jumping on him. He would jump, like he would run up and he would jump on Thad's chest and his broken legs with all of his weight landing knee first. If you can imagine jumping and then landing on his knees directly onto Thad's chest, and it breaking his ribs and crushing his already broken legs. Once he was done, he would try and patch Thad up and look after him, and he carried him back downstairs, sat next to him on the sofa, where they watched a few movies together until Thad eventually passed out and slept until morning. When he woke up, his legs didn't resemble legs anymore. His ankles were the size of softballs, which is 2 inches bigger than a baseball, which is a lot bigger than an ankle should be.
Yeah.
His thighs were the diameter of a basketball.
Oh.
Thad was a very slight boy, very, very skinny. So his legs were small to begin with. He said that they looked alien to him. And he remembered thinking that if he got through this, there was no chance of him ever being able to walk again. Not only were his bones being broken, but imagine the rest of the damage inside. When you break a bone, it's not just that the bone's broken. Capillaries were being broken, veins broken, nerves torn and shredded. His muscles being like sort of shredded as well. He was bleeding internally because of this trauma, and the amount of swelling that he had was inflammation and also blood pooling to the area. His legs were every shade of bruise that you can imagine. They were deep black, purple, blue, yellow, red, and up until this point, pure adrenaline had been suppressing the majority of the pain. But it was now starting to wear off, and he was in excruciating pain. A pain like nothing he had ever felt before. And at that moment, Joe saw that Thad was awake. And without a second's pause, he carried Thad upstairs to the bedroom and again began to torture him. And he grabbed Thad's left leg and began twisting it at the knee until his knee was no longer where his knee should be, but instead it was completely backwards and just obliterated. And he stopped this attack to masturbate in front of Thad.
Oh, for crying out loud.
And then carried on. That evening, Joe was planning to go out again. He'd been invited to a party with his girlfriend, and he no longer trusted Thad to be left out, despite the fact that he was pretty broken by now.
Yeah.
So he'd already tried to escape twice. So he was no longer trusted. So he locked Thad in the bedroom closet and then left. But Thad wasn't done trying to escape. So he looked around in the closet, in this little space that he had, for anything that he could use to try and get himself out. And he came across an old guitar. He didn't have much leverage, not being able to stand. So he was just on the floor. That with this guitar, he threw it against the door with every bit of strength that he had left. And he managed to destroy enough of the door to poke his arm through and unlock it. So once again, he dragged himself to the top of the stairs, and remembering the painful ordeal of throwing himself down the stairs the last time, but having no other option, he once again went down head first, bashing every part of his body on each step, falling to the bottom and then passing out again. But this time, he wasn't out for very long, and he managed to drag himself into the kitchen to where the phone was attached to the wall. Fate played a massive hand here, because although the phone was attached to the wall, it had a long enough cord that dangled down low enough for Thad to reach. He then pulled the cord and the phone came down. Had that not have been the case, he would never have been able to reach the phone on the wall. Also, the numbers just happened to be on the handset, and not the base unit. Again, if the numbers had been on the base unit, there was no way he would have been able to dial for help. He called 911. He was calm and collected, and he told police what had happened. He told police his rough location, having walked there from his own home. He was half a mile away from his house. He told police his legs and ankles were broken, and then he gave them Joe's name. Police knew right away where he was and who Joe was. They had had dealings with him before. When police arrived, they found the house in complete disarray. And there's audio of the 911 call. And you can hear, while Thad's on the phone to 911, the police entering the house. And they call out to him. And he just says, so calmly, he just goes, I'm here. I'm here. And they say, is anyone else here with you? Is anyone else here? And he goes, nope, just me.
Okay, the officers are there. Hold on. Stay on with me, though, okay?
Police! Dad?
We're here.
Wait, anybody else here with you?
No, just me.
Just super calm, super chill. And then you hear him cry out in pain. And the officer goes, oh, sorry. And I don't know if they'd tried to pick him up, if they tried to move him. But you can hear how much pain he was in. The officers were in absolute shock at the state of little Thad. Both of his feet were facing the wrong directions.
Oh, gosh.
Both his knees were backwards and his legs didn't resemble legs. So Thad was carefully loaded onto a stretcher and taken to the hospital. His ordeal had lasted 43 hours and just a half a mile from his house. When Thad woke up in hospital, doctors told him, had he not have escaped when he did, he would have died within 2 hours due to internal bleeding because 1/3 of his blood had poured into his legs.
Oh,
his legs were broken in 4 places. The skin around his ankles was like rubber.
Oh.
All of his toes were pointing in the wrong direction. It required hours of surgery to fix, years of rehab and other surgeries that would result in Thad having a permanent limp, but being able to walk. Police located Joe at a party and arrested him. His first words to police officers were, so I guess he's still alive then. His intentions all along were to kill Thad once he was done with him. So Joe Clarke was a 17-year-old teenage boy, practically raising himself. He had an alcoholic mother and father who were absent the majority of the time. He'd been placed in foster care as a child and then later adopted. His adopted mother was away looking after her daughter at the time, allowing Joe to come and go as he pleased. The year prior, he had sustained a head injury as the result of a motorbike accident, and it was reported that he had suffered brain damage. Which is funny because a lot of these serial killers and things had some sort of temporal lobe
that's interesting,
prefrontal cortex damage. After the accident, his adoptive parents and his school peers noticed a huge change in his personality. They said that he was very quick to anger and suffered from fits of rage, but nothing was ever done about it. And when police searched the house after they'd arrested him, they found a piece of paper. And the piece of paper was a hit list of sorts, and it had 29 names on it. There were 3 headings on the page with a list of names under each. The first one, can wait. The second one, get to now. And the third one, the leg thing.
Oh.
Police were certain that had they not apprehended him when they did, he would have continued. But they had another investigation to launch as well, because Joe had told Thad that he had done this to 2 other boys. And at the time, he had named both boys to Thad, but Thad could only remember the name of one of the boys, Chris Steiner. So if you remember from the beginning, Chris Steiner's death had been ruled a drowning when his body was found in the river. The autopsy concluded that he had water in his lungs, but with his parents' permission, police were able to resume his body. It was taken for another autopsy, and an in-depth X-ray was taken, and it was found that his legs were indeed broken. X-rays were originally done during the first autopsy, and broken bones had been present, but it was assumed that they'd been broken by the current of the river. You know, his body had been in there for could have been up to 6 days.
And tumbling about.
So now that they had a reference or something to compare it to, they found that Chris's legs had breaks in them almost identical to Thad's. At the time when police were searching for his body, Joe was among those that had originally been questioned. He'd been the last person to speak to Chris, or so Chris's mother had said. He had turned up on their doorstep asking Chris to go somewhere with him. But Chris had refused. He said, I've got work tomorrow. I don't want to be late. I want an early night. So he'd refused to go with Joe. And during the questioning, Joe's adoptive mother had actually given him an alibi and said that he'd been home all night. But that was untrue. He had snuck out while she slept, had gone to Chris's house, had slashed open the screen of the downstairs brother's bedroom where he knew that the brother wasn't home. And the next part about what happened to Chris isn't known and probably never will be, but it's assumed that he done to Chris what he had done to Thad. And once he'd finished with Chris and broken his leg bones and done whatever he wanted with him, he then threw him in the river where he then drowned. During the initial investigation as well, when Chris had disappeared, his peer group at school all said that they believed Joe had done something to Chris. Because of these fits of rage, they actually believed that he was capable of murder. And his adoptive dad had heard children in the playground saying that about Joe, but had never done anything or... So he was known in the area by police and other children as well, that he was not a good guy. For the abduction and torture of Thad, Joe was charged with causing great bodily harm to a child, mayhem, with intent to disable or disfigure, causing mental harm to a child, and child enticement. He pled no contest and not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. He was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to 100 years for the kidnap and torture of Thad for his 43-hour ordeal. The judge awarded Thad $21 million, but to this day, Thad hasn't seen a single penny of it. And there is actually a GoFundMe page for him active.
Really?
So it was believed that the judge thought that perhaps Joe would make some money from notoriety, something like that. And then all of that money that he made would then go to Thad, but he hasn't had any of the money.
Why? Why award him all that money and then like he doesn't get it? What's the point in awarding him?
The judge said he thought that in the future Joe would make some money off, like I said, his notoriety and books or interviews that he did or something like that.
Yeah, well, don't award him 21 million or whatever.
Yeah.
What's the point?
I don't know. I didn't do it. It wasn't me.
Plebs.
After the trial, Joe was then charged with first-degree homicide in relation to Chris Steiner, mayhem, causing great bodily harm to a child. And Thad was actually due to testify again in Joe's trial for Chris's murder. But before he could, a neighbour of Joe's, a 15-year-old Michael Hubsch, I've probably not pronounced that right, but he doesn't need to be pronounced right. He was an absolute douche. He went to Thad's house and shot him twice in the back with a hunting rifle. Michael and Joe were allegedly friends, and Michael had looked up to Joe, and he was upset about the results of the first trial and wanted revenge. But the legend that is Thad obviously survived. He went to court and he testified against Joe Clarke, And Joe was then sentenced to an additional life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Jeez.
So he will not be getting out of prison.
I can't believe that. This kid, Thad. Jeez.
Honestly, what a hero.
He's made of something else, isn't he?
Yeah. And if you saw a bit, like, he's a really skinny little kid, but everyone kind of, in all the interviews and things, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube you can watch. They all say about this natural survival instinct about the fact that he was trying to humanize himself, and that he just didn't give up, you know, despite the pain that he was in. He threw himself down the stairs twice. He just had this want or need to survive. And actually on the day that he called 911, it was his brother's birthday, and he desperately wanted to get home for his brother's birthday.
Oh, he's such a little champion, isn't he? Jeez.
Yeah.
I would like to think that I would have that kind of fight in me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just incredible.
He was a scrappy little guy.
Yeah.
Scrappy
Oh,
little guy.
what a tough nut he is.
For
Jeez.
anyone that has listened to this story before on a different podcast, or has seen the YouTube interviews and things like that, the list that was made, I've seen the list, and it says can wait, get to now, or the leg thing, and it says get to now, NOW. A lot of people are saying get to know. So if you've heard it differently, I don't know whether I'm wrong or they're wrong, but it's spelled NOW, which is now. So, but a lot of podcasts are saying get to know. So either way, you do not want to be on that list under any column. There was a Reddit forum of somebody that had gone to school with Joe, and he said that his brother had actually been on that list.
No.
He himself wasn't, but his brother had been on that list, and I was thinking, can you imagine?
Out of all the lists in the world.
Yeah.
That is not one I want to be a part of.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, so sorry for the squirm.
Yeah, that was proper. That was squirm on a whole different level. I feel quite rough.
Sorry. But to break someone's bone, especially the femur bone, Thad said at the time, he didn't feel any pain. He just heard it pop.
Yeah.
He would just hear the bone. So there was some sort of saving grace that he wasn't in excruciating pain when he was breaking his bone. But I think shock and adrenaline's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It's great,
it can
isn't
mask all that pain.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there you go, the bone breaker.
Thanks.
Aptly named.
Yeah. I feel rough, so we might have to talk about it and discuss it another time. That was proper uncomfortable, but it's a great story, and I haven't heard it before.
Haven't you?
No. So yeah, or I have, and my brain's
repressed
zoned it out. Yeah.
It's in a lockbox.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for listening.
Gonna go and have a lay down.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
If you have enjoyed listening to our episodes, make sure you rate us and leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening.
We absolutely love hearing from you guys. So you can also help support our show by donating to our Buy Me a Coffee link. We will make sure that you get a massive shout out and a big thank you in our next week's episode.
You can also follow us on social media at Perplexed Podcasts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and if you want to see more videos and blooper reels, subscribe to our TikTok and YouTube channels.
You can also email us your stories at perplexedpodcasts@gmail.com.
And you can find all the relevant links in the episode descriptions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.